At 44 years old, Floyd Mayweather breaks his silence, and what he reveals now shocks even those who thought they knew every chapter of his controversial legacy. For the first time, the undefeated champion names the 5 people he claims have left the deepest wounds, the rivals whose actions went far beyond professional competition. It's an unexpected confession, one that raises a haunting question. Why now? Why choose this moment to expose the grudges he has carried for years? Insiders suggest that this list has existed in the shadows for a long time, shaped by betrayal, humiliation, mind games, and ego clashes that erupted both under bright lights and behind closed doors. Witnesses recall tense confrontations backstage, explosive arguments in private gyms, and quiet wars that helped define Mayweather's rise to greatness. Number 5. Manny Pacquiao. He was the rival the world celebrated, the opponent fans begged to see again and again, but behind the scenes, the tension between Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao was far more brutal than the cameras ever captured. Their feud didn't begin in the ring, it began long before the bell ever rang. Both men carried the weight of global expectations, but only one of them felt cornered by the constant comparisons, the endless claims that he was avoiding the fight that would define a generation. Insiders remember the early years, interviews where Pacquiao's team questioned Mayweather's courage, whispers from promoters suggesting that Floyd was afraid to lose the zero, and journalists who painted Pacquiao as the true people's champion. Each headline dug at Mayweather's pride. Witnesses from his inner circle recall nights where he slammed articles onto the table, furious at being called a coward, insisting that he was being manipulated by politics, lies, and media narratives designed to undermine his legacy. The real scandal erupted when negotiations repeatedly collapsed. Pacquiao's camp blamed Floyd, and Floyd blamed them. But behind closed doors, producers and executives admitted the truth. Neither side wanted to give an inch, and the bitterness became personal. At one point, a former promoter claims Floyd confronted Pacquiao's representatives backstage at a Las Vegas event, accusing them of trying to build a hero by tearing another man down. Witnesses described the exchange as explosive, with both sides walking away convinced the fight would never happen. Even when the mega fight finally took place, the animosity didn't die. Mayweather believed Pacquiao's excuses afterward, the shoulder injury, the complaints about judging, the accusations of running, were all part of a narrative designed to downplay his victory. For Floyd, it wasn't just disrespect. It was betrayal. It reinforced every wound the rivalry had created over the years. And that is why Manny Pacquiao stands as number 5, not simply as an opponent, but as a symbol of a decade-long feud that scarred Mayweather far deeper than the world ever saw. Number 4. Oscar de la Hoya. Long before their rivalry became one of the biggest events in boxing history, the tension between Floyd Mayweather and Oscar de la Hoya simmered beneath the surface like a silent war waiting to ignite. For Mayweather, de la Hoya was more than a former opponent. He was a symbol of the boxing establishment that never fully accepted him. And for de la Hoya, Mayweather was the outsider who dared to challenge his empire, shatter his star power, and expose the fractures within his promotional machine. Insiders recall the early 2000s when De La Hoya's team would openly question Mayweather's marketability. Some producers claimed Oscar once said, "He's talented, but he'll never be a star." Witnesses close to Floyd say those words hit him like a blade. He believed De La Hoya tried to keep him in the shadows, delaying big fights, manipulating negotiations, and using his influence to control narratives within the industry. The real scandal erupted after their 2007 fight, a clash that shattered pay-per-view records. Although Floyd won, De La Hoya's comments afterward infuriated him. Oscar suggested the fight could have gone either way, claimed Mayweather ran too much, and fueled a media storm that painted the victory as controversial. To Floyd, it felt like De La Hoya refused to acknowledge his greatness. Instead of giving respect, he accused Mayweather of ruining boxing's golden style. But the feud deepened when Mayweather built his own promotional empire. Executives behind the scenes say De La Hoya saw it as a betrayal, a direct challenge to his dominance in the promotional world. Tensions exploded during negotiations for other fighters, accusations of bad faith deals, stolen talent, and public jabs disguised as business criticism. One producer remembers a backstage encounter in which Mayweather pointed directly at De La Hoya and said, "You hated watching me win, and you hate even more that I built something bigger than you." the bitterness never faded. Even years after retiring, De La Hoya continued throwing verbal jabs on social media, and each one only reinforced Mayweather's belief that the Golden Boy's pride had been cracked the night he lost. And that is why Oscar De La Hoya stands as number 4, a rivalry forged not only in the ring, but in ego, legacy, and the battle for control over the sport itself. Number 3, Canelo Alvarez. The world remembers the 2013 fight as a masterclass, the night Floyd Mayweather schooled a rising star. But behind the bright lights and record-breaking attention, the rivalry between Mayweather and Canelo Alvarez became one of the most personal, simmering long after the final bell. For Canelo, the defeat was a scar. For Floyd, it was the arrogance that followed that left a deeper wound. Insiders reveal that tensions began even before the contracts were signed. Canelo's team pushed for weight demands, promotional leverage, and public positioning that Mayweather saw as disrespectful. Witnesses recall Floyd shaking his head during early negotiations, muttering that the young star was being built like he was already a legend. To Mayweather, the hype machine around Canelo felt engineered, not earned. It triggered a bitterness that would only grow. After the fight, the scandal wasn't in the result, and it was in the aftermath. Canelo, still early in his career, openly dismissed the loss as a lesson rather than a defeat. His camp argued that he was too young, that Mayweather ran, and that the judges were biased. Producers who attended post-fight discussions say Floyd walked out of one interview furious, believing Canelo was trying to rewrite the narrative to protect his pride. He felt that instead of acknowledging the schooling he received, the rising star treated the fight as a technicality, a footnote. The real anger came years later. As Canelo matured into the face of boxing, he began calling himself the best of his era, dismissing Mayweather's victory as irrelevant due to his youth. Some insiders claim Floyd saw these comments as a direct attempt to diminish his legacy. One witness recalls a private moment where Mayweather allegedly said, "He wants to erase what happened, but I gave him that lesson, the one he'll never admit." Tension escalated when Canelo criticized Mayweather's style, branding it boring and not real fighting. This struck Floyd deeply. To him, it was disrespect from someone he believed owed him the very path to superstardom. Every dismissal, every interview, every indirect jab added salt to the wound. That is why Canelo Alvarez stands as number 3, not just because of a fight, but because of a slow-burning resentment rooted in pride, legacy, and the refusal to acknowledge a night that defined both men. Number 2, Ricky Hatton. To the public, the rivalry between Floyd Mayweather and Ricky Hatton was electrifying. A clash between two undefeated stars, one carrying the pride of the United States and the other the hopes of an entire nation. But to Mayweather, Hatton was more than just an opponent. He became a symbol of mockery, disrespect, and a personal wound that lasted long after the fight ended. Insiders recall the lead-up to their 2007 showdown as one of the most toxic build-ups in Mayweather's career. Hatton's camp fired jab after jab, calling Mayweather arrogant, cowardly, and even questioning his character as a champion. British fans flooded the Vegas Strip, chanting songs that belittled him, and witnesses say Floyd felt surrounded, disrespected not just by an opponent, but by a movement determined to humiliate him. The scandal peaked during promotional events. Producers remember one press conference where Hatton playfully shoved Mayweather, a moment replayed in media as harmless fun. But witnesses backstage claim Floyd was furious, telling his team, "He's trying to clown me in front of the world." It wasn't the shove that angered him. It was the message. Hatton was positioning him as a villain, a man to be mocked rather than respected. After the fight, which ended in a decisive Mayweather victory, the bitterness didn't fade. Hatton's loyal fan base blamed referees, strategy, even Mayweather's style. They insisted their hero would have won under fairer circumstances. Floyd, according to insiders, felt robbed, not of the win, but of the respect he believed he earned that night. The deepest wound, however, came later. Hatton continued making jokes about Mayweather in interviews, calling him boring, calling his victory lucky, and implying he had manipulated the system. Witnesses recall Mayweather seeing one of these interviews years later and shaking his head, muttering that Hatton never learned to lose. But beneath the anger, there was something darker. Mayweather believed Hatton resented him not just as a fighter, but as a symbol, a man who shattered national pride in front of millions. And every time Hatton minimized his defeat, it reopened the wound. That is why Ricky Hatton stands as number 2, the rival who turned competition into mockery, leaving a bitterness that time never fully erased. Number 1, Conor McGregor. No rivalry in Mayweather's career blended chaos, ego, and pure hostility the way his feud with Conor McGregor did. It wasn't just a fight, it was a cultural explosion, two worlds colliding, each man determined not just to win, but to humiliate the other in front of the entire planet. And for Mayweather, McGregor became the embodiment of a rivalry that cut far deeper than anything that happened in the ring. Insiders say the tension started long before the fight was even real. McGregor mocked his age, his fighting style, his financial decisions, even his identity as a boxer. Producers recall early press whispers McGregor didn't want to beat Floyd, he wanted to break him. Witnesses describe private meetings where Mayweather's team played clips of McGregor's insults, each more vicious than the last, and Floyd sat there, watching silently, jaw tight, absorbing every word like fuel. But the real scandal erupted during their world tour. Insults turned to personal attacks. Showmanship became warfare. Backstage witnesses report that McGregor once shouted at Mayweather's entourage, sparking a near brawl that security barely contained. One insider claims Mayweather told his manager afterward, "He crossed a line tonight. This isn't promotion anymore. This is personal." Then came the fight, a spectacle drenched in hype, money, and global attention. But even after Floyd won, the wound didn't close. McGregor continued taking shots, claiming he had carried the fight, that Mayweather couldn't hurt him, that he could knock him out in a rematch. For Floyd, it was pure disrespect, the refusal to acknowledge defeat, the refusal to offer even a fraction of humility. The deepest cut came later when McGregor mocked Mayweather's domestic controversies and finances in interviews. Insiders confirm that Floyd saw those comments as unforgivable. "There are boundaries you don't cross," one longtime associate said. Conor didn't just cross them, he sprinted past them. Even now, the tension simmers. McGregor still throws jabs online. Mayweather still responds when pushed. But beneath the public show lies something real, a rivalry built on ego, pride, and wounds that fame alone cannot heal. And that is why Conor McGregor stands as number 1, the man whose feud with Mayweather didn't end with the bell, but continues echoing through both their careers. Behind the polished victories and undefeated legacy, the darkest twist comes from the voices of insiders who claim Mayweather's resentment didn't end with these 5 rivals. It shaped him. One producer recalls a moment backstage when Floyd finally admitted, "Every one of them tried to break me in a different way." It was the first time he acknowledged how deeply those feuds carved into his life. The real shock isn't the list itself, but the revelation that each rivalry left a wound the public never saw. And as the lights fade, Mayweather stands not just as a champion, but as a man who has carried scars far heavier than championship belts. These conflicts, public, private, explosive, remind us that greatness often walks hand in hand with shadows. In the end, his story shows that fame does not heal. It exposes. And the higher the spotlight shines, the darker the truth becomes, hidden just beneath the surface of victory.